Thanks for checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board. If you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and you can check out all of my work, including the 2022 Rookie Big Board, at patreon.com/theFFeducator. This is the Senior Bowl recap show. I will be breaking down all of the action from Mobile. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, ready to dig in specifically to the winners from the 2022 Senior Bowl week. I'll also be talking about some folks whose draft stock dropped a little bit, and of course, really honing in, as always, on the fantasy football impact of this NFL draft process event. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here with a little bit of a breakdown for folks who may not be as familiar with the Senior Bowl. And I'm going to talk about how I use the event to factor into fantasy football expectations. So the Senior Bowl is the premier showcase event for NFL draft prospects, specifically eligible only to NFL prospects who have completed their college degree, hence the name Senior Bowl. It is also open to juniors who have gotten their degrees, who finished early through 3.5 years of college. And it's important because it gives prospects the ability to raise their draft stock. And draft capital factors in not only to the Rookie Big Board rating itself, because it projects opportunity, but it also allows me to project volume more confidently with players. So there's a good opportunity here as players get the ability to be pulled out of their system to show some of their raw tools. Some of the smaller school guys have the ability to show that they can compete against top level competition. And again, it's just another opportunity. Every NFL front office is there, all the top scouts, the GMs, the head coaches on the field, able to work with these guys here. And what I'm doing in this episode is I'm breaking down my notes from Senior Bowl practice here. And also I'm going to provide some insight into the different chatter that I've been hearing throughout the week. I was not able to be down in Mobile, but thankfully the NFL Draft Bible team was, and I'm able to provide some of their insights. And I did also get access to all 3 days of practice for the Senior Bowl. For folks who are maybe not as familiar with the event, it's really the practice days that matter. All right, day 1, day 2, day 3 of practice. Almost everybody is gone by the time they play the actual showcase game. So let's go ahead and jump into it here with the first winner from Mobile, and that is going to start at the quarterback position. It is Malik Willis out of Liberty. I moved him up 1 spot in the QB rankings on the Rookie Big Board, and I moved him up 3 spots in my overall rankings here. Malik Willis, when you look at my notes from him from Senior Bowl here, day 1 he did struggle a little bit. Now most quarterbacks do struggle on day 1 of the Senior Bowl, try to get that cadence, try to get into rhythm. And so he was a little slow off the gate, but in day 2, he really improved. He looked comfortable as a passer. His mechanics looked a lot tighter here. He anticipates really well. He has good zip on that ball. The mechanics overall looked a lot cleaner. And this is really important for a prospect like Malik Willis. Think about Willis now. 4-star recruit, originally is at Auburn here, starts developing well, really pushes Bo Nix in that quarterback competition, ends up losing it, transfers to Liberty, and now Malik Willis is at a disadvantage because he's playing at Liberty behind a horrible offensive line. So playing behind that bad offensive line with not top-tier coaching, I know Hugh Freeze is there, but he's not really getting top-tier all-around holistic coaching, right? And so Malik Willis had to rely on his tools to be able to compete at Liberty. So he relied on his big arm and he relied on his legs. He didn't have the opportunity to develop pocket presence, didn't have the ability to develop mechanics. So when I see Malik Willis come to Senior Bowl week and over the course of 3 days, his mechanics start to look a little bit cleaner, that to me says he's coachable. He can be developed into a prospect here. And all the chatter that I'm hearing from folks that I trust on the ground in Mobile said that Malik Willis was far and away the most impressive quarterback at Senior Bowl week. And so the reason he moved up in the rankings is because I moved his projection up from late day 1 to early day 2, which are picks 20 through 50 overall in the NFL draft. I moved him up to day 1 mid. He's in that pick 10 overall to 20 overall territory for me right now. And I would not be surprised if by the end of this draft process, Malik Willis is not competing for that quarterback 1 drafted off the board slot here in the NFL draft. And if that does happen, of course, he will continue to move up fantasy football boards here. We're not specifically talking about losers, but Pitt's Kenny Pickett did seem to be the biggest loser at the quarterback position. He was and still is my quarterback 1. I did slightly drop down his RBBR. And so now, if you look at the quarterback position, it was close before, but between Willis, Pickett, Howell, in Matt Corral, who is not at the Senior Bowl, it is very close between those four guys. In the next couple months, could really shake up the order that all of these guys are in here in my rankings. Sam Howell was there, Bailey Zappe was there, Desmond Ridder was there, Carson Strong was there. If you look at my notes here from the Senior Bowl here with all of these guys, and I did actually make my Senior Bowl notes available to the patrons here, it's pretty straightforward here. We know what Sam Howell is, right? He was making the easy throws. He was showing off his arm. He was missing tight windows, right? He was slightly off rhythm, right? You look at a guy like Bailey Zappe, really good job of keeping his body closed, which was one of his big flaws on his tape evaluation. He worked through his progressions well. I think Bailey Zappe is still an early day 3 selection, but this could be a guy that hangs around as a backup, but when he gets his shot, has the ability to command an NFL offense. There were some folks that like Desmond Ridder. Honestly, here's the deal. If you go and watch Senior Bowl practice, you're going to confirm your priors on Desmond Ridder, right? If you like Desmond Ridder going in, you're going to see him have the ability to show nice footwork, move around the field. If you didn't like him as much, and I'm hesitant on him, you're going to see him struggle with velocity. You're going to see him overthrowing targets. And a lot of people are excited about Carson Strong. Listen, this is an event for a quarterback like Carson Strong. He's got no pressure on him. He can huck the ball deep. He shows off his big arm. He shows off those tools. That's absolutely fine here. But Carson Strong is who we thought we were, right? He is who we thought we knew he was, right? So, I mean, it's just... It's the same guy here, and the question's going to be the medicals when it comes to Carson Strong, and that's going to be confirmed in Indianapolis. But let's move on to another riser, and this is one I am fired up about. I'm so excited about this. We're going all in. We're going all in on Jerome Ford. I moved him up 3 spots in my running back rankings, so he's now RB5. I've wanted to have the confidence here to push Jerome Ford up to RB5, and Senior Bowl week allowed me to do that. He moves up 6 spots in my overall rankings, so he pushed up from a early 3rd round pick, late 2nd round rookie pick in Superflex leagues, and I bumped him up to that mid 2nd round value here in Superflex leagues. And this is a couple pieces that come into this, right? It starts with Jerome Ford himself. He displayed really nice lateral agility. That was a question mark because Cincinnati didn't really demand him to move laterally very often. He looked really light on his feet. I got to tell you, one of the question marks was pure athleticism with Jerome Ford. He's still not the most purely athletic running back, but he looks a lot lighter on his feet. He's got good burst off the line of scrimmage. And I got to tell you, his burst, his lateral quickness, it showed up throughout the entire week. Overall, he was one of the, if not the most impressive running backs. Most folks have Jerome Ford and another running back that we're going to talk about here as kind of the top guys from the week. And so certainly excited about Jerome Ford and what he was able to show there during Senior Bowl week itself. The next riser here is Dameon Pierce, the running back out of Florida. Pierce, I mentioned that Ford was most folks' best running back of the week, or a top running back, I should say. The consensus kind of top back or most impressive relative to thoughts coming in was going to be Dameon Pierce, the running back out of Florida. Now, Pierce, low volume guy at Florida, was never really able to command that backfield here, and it led to a lot of question marks. A high 4-star recruit coming out of high school here, but clearly there was challenges with that UF offense. It ends up with Dan Mullen getting fired there, but Pierce comes down to Mobile. He shows good burst. He looks explosive in short space. A lot of folks are really impressed with his ability in pass protection here. And so for Dameon Pierce, he was somebody who really rose his NFL draft capital. And I got to tell you, this is why Mobile is so important, these types of pre-draft events, because it allows players to pull out of their offensive system. Dameon Pierce is moving up 10 spots in my running back rankings. He's up to running back 12 here. So there probably are folks who are ready to put Dameon Pierce in the top 8 to 10 of their running back rankings. I'm not quite there yet. We could continue to develop that momentum, especially if he does finally gain or essentially gain that top 100 capital here in the 2022 NFL draft. But for now, he moves up 10 spots. He moves up 15 overall points here, or spots in my rankings, I should say. So that's a really impressive jump. Dameon Pierce went from somebody who wasn't on my radar to somebody who is absolutely on my radar. Right now, still a 3rd round rookie selection for me, but somebody who could really build momentum here as we go through the draft process, especially if he puts up a fast time here in Indianapolis, and that is to be determined. But let's go ahead and jump on to Tyler Badie, I apologize. He ends up moving up 5 spots in the running back rankings, 10 spots overall. Now, Badie was somebody who was really fun on tape as a PPR type back here, and he goes to Mobile. He looks comfortable working along the outside. He shows really nice footwork, a really fluid, effortless cutting ability here, a good lateral quickness here. Now, Badie, he's still undersized, and that's why I still think he's going to end up going in day 3, but he could be a round 4 selection in the NFL draft, and he could be somebody potentially, who does slip a little bit in the draft, but still finds a good role in an NFL offense, maybe a la Michael Carter. I'm not drawing complete, comparisons with their skill set, but I'm just saying that they could end up finding themselves in a similar fantasy football position. So we're going to track Badie still in the 3rd round for me in rookie drafts right now, but somebody who could find himself continuing to rise over the next couple months here. Let's jump to the wide receiver position here because we got a big winner, and this is somebody who I was really excited about. If you go and listen back or watch back to the Senior Bowl preview episode when I previewed wide receivers with John Lobb, I talked about my excitement for Christian Watson coming in. Christian Watson out of North Dakota State moves up 7 spots in my wide receiver rankings here. He's a top 12 wide receiver now for me. He moves up 12 spots overall. He is a locked and loaded 3rd round rookie pick selection. He's not getting out of the 3rd round in any of my rookie drafts because I'm taking him whether I have that 301 or that 312. If he's available, I'm going for him. 6'4", 210 pounds. He weighs in not significantly lower than North Dakota State listed him at, which was really huge. He goes there, and if you put a different helmet on him, if you put a Power 5 helmet on him, you would have thought he was a 4-year starter because this guy is good. He has a really nice first step. He sits really, really well into his routes. He breaks DBs moving downfield. He moves through his routes effortlessly. He's got really nice focus to catch one-on-one balls in tight coverage. There's one situation here I'm remembering in detail from day 2 of practice here, and oftentimes it's difficult for quarterbacks to come down to Mobile. They don't have their cadence, they don't have their rhythm, they don't have their wide receivers, and so oftentimes they underthrow, they miss their guys, and so it's really good opportunity for contested catch type catchers to go out there and show that they can work through that. And there's a play on day 2 where Christian Watson gets a target along the sideline. He goes up, reacts well to an underthrown ball, it boxes out the defender to the point where it's an actual DPI call. They do have a ref out there on the field for the 7-on-9 drills. The DB drags Christian Watson down, gets the DPI, and Watson still reacts to the underthrown ball and brings it in. And it's just a really good example of what excited folks throughout the entire week. All the chatter on the ground from the NFL Draft Bible team and from the other sources that I trust have said that Christian Watson was the dude, and you can really see it here. He does really well in the one-on-one DB wide receiver drills. He's got good release. Nobody helped themselves out more than Christian Watson. I think there is an absolute possibility here that he goes in the top 100, and that is a huge bump for somebody who, if he didn't have the opportunity to go down to Mobile, probably would have been a 6th-round draft pick just based off of school name itself, but he has the athleticism, he has the height. There's no reason he's not a top 100 pick here in this year's NFL draft, and it's somebody who I was high on going in, and now I feel very confident going all in on. Another wide receiver that helped himself out here, and I got to tell you, Velus Jones here out of the University of Tennessee, he's somebody that I picked up on more than I've necessarily heard chatter for. So I mentioned this is a combination of what I'm hearing, but also what I'm seeing myself watching the Senior Bowl practice tape. And for Velus Jones, I saw somebody that I really liked coming off of his tape. And you have to remember with Jones, he's 6'0", 200 pounds, but he primarily played out of the slot for Tennessee. So he's going to play in that big slot role, and we've seen that work really well for NFL wide receivers for fantasy purposes over the last few years. That's kind of a developing role here, a recent trend, especially when it comes to fantasy football production. Now, Jones, I thought for 200 pounds, accelerated very well for his size. He moves off the line of scrimmage very well. So I think Jones could absolutely chew up the seam here at the next level. He's really comfortable working in off coverage, and I think that's really important because at 6'0", 200, he's going to be able to, I think, work nickel corners really well with physicality. And if he can get off coverage well, then that really gives him versatility, right? He had the opportunity to work across defensive backs really well. He broke defensive backs downfield with good footwork, and we saw nice ball tracking as well. So not somebody who is getting as much chatter. And, obviously it's different seeing things on the field versus seeing the tape. But when I was going back and just reviewing the tape, I definitely saw a lot to like out of Velus Jones out of the University of Tennessee. Now, somebody else that's a little bit harder to quantify for fantasy football purposes is Calvin Austin III. Now, Calvin Austin III, he's 5'7". He did weigh in the 170s here, so he's a small guy, right? And so the question is going to be, what is his role in the NFL? But everybody confirmed here, and you could see it on the tape, the best case scenario for Calvin Austin. And so I did move him up slightly, 3 spots in my wide receiver rankings, 5 spots in my overall rankings here. He is very quick, right? He moves very quickly. He moves with very sharp footwork here. He did struggle to get off of press coverage here, but I think that's the key. An NFL offense is not going to draft him to be able to allow him to get jammed at the line of scrimmage, right? They're going to put him in motion. They're going to find ways to get him into space. And so he does very much rely on his footwork. He does a lot better when he's playing in zone coverage or off coverage, right? And so the question is, where does Calvin Austin fit for fantasy football purposes? Can we project volume for him? I do think he goes in day 2 of the NFL draft, but is that a special teams role? Is that a gadgety type role, right? It may not necessarily translate for fantasy football right away, but that NFL draft capital is absolutely going to demand that he gets drafted. Some other guys that I know got good chatter here, Jalen Tolbert. I didn't see it as much on the tape, but folks thought that Jalen Tolbert overall had a really good week at Mobile, potentially moved himself into the day 2 conversation. I thought Malik Pierce looked nice on the tape. He worked well off press coverage. He was really physical, battling through DPI, finding space. I thought he won some nice DB wide receiver one-on-one drills with his physical hands and ability to build speed along the boundary. So I liked Malik Pierce. A big loser for me is Romeo Doubs. I was lower on Doubs than most folks, and I'm going to continue to be. I don't think I'm going to have Doubs on any of my fantasy football teams. He really, really struggled getting off of press coverage. That man was jammed at the line, jammed downfield, didn't separate well, struggled to catch balls in contested catch situations. Not getting a lot of hype, but I thought Danny Gray at SMU had really nice footwork on tape. I thought he did really well in the DB one-on-one drills, especially on day 1. Thought he got upfield really quickly here. Khalil Shakur. We know who Khalil Shakur is, but he's got a potent first step. He puts defensive backs on space. He's consistently winning off the line of scrimmage. So like I said, I don't know how it translates for fantasy football, but if Shakur is sitting there in the 4th round, even the 5th round of some deeper drafts here, if he does slide to that point, then he's absolutely somebody that I'm going to be investing in. And quite frankly, I already have him on a lot of Deviant C2C rosters, so I'm probably not going to need too much more exposure, but I might get some. One tight end really that I want to point out, and it was the tight end that we knew going in. It's Trey McBride. He was actually just slightly below Jane Weidemeyer as tight end 2 going into the Senior Bowl. With his Senior Bowl performance, I'm just going all in here on Trey McBride because he's got really fun tape. He's a fun player, and it'll be close with him and Weidemeyer, but I'd rather take Trey McBride at this point in time. So I moved him up 1 spot in my wide receiver rankings, 3 spots in the overall rankings. We're sitting at about 209, 210 is where I'm comfortable taking Trey McBride right now. And by the way, I'm doing a rookie draft with the patrons right now, and Trey McBride went 210. So it really lines up. It really fits here. You see at the Senior Bowl, he had really great handwork. It was on full display, a good catch radius. Some folks, that I'm hearing from the Draft Bible team are thinking that he had the best hands of anybody out there. Forget wide receivers, and that's kind of something that I've heard through multiple sources here, that Trey McBride really did show up to Mobile and really did impress with his handwork, with his athleticism. And you go back on tape, and he has good blocking ability as well. And so he does have the ability to be a two-way tight end in the NFL, and I think an NFL team is really going to value that. Most likely going to be tight end 1 off the board. The question is going to be, does he come off the board in the top 50? Does an NFL team want a tight end that bad that he comes off the board in the top 50? I think conventionally we think no, but I think he does. I think there's an NFL team that's sitting there mid-round 2, and if they really need a tight end, that's going to be that extra piece in their offense. An athletic tight end has really shown the ability to elevate an NFL offense. It's difficult to scheme against for NFL defenses if you have to worry about bigger playmakers along the outside. So I think Trey McBride could get top 50 draft capital, and that was part of the reason why I bumped him up there in my rankings. I'm not going to talk in too much detail because he's still tight end 6, even though he moved up. But Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State had a good week. I'm still, to be determined how he's going to translate for fantasy football purposes, but he has the ability to be a future red zone threat. He practiced the first 2 days of Senior Bowl practice. And kind of a trend or a niche thing to follow at the Senior Bowl is that if players do really well in the first day or 2 of practice, they'll just stop practicing because they've helped their draft stock enough. Jeremy Ruckert helped his draft stock enough. He only did the first 2 days of practice, and I think he's probably going to go in the top 102 first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. And so I think that's really key for Jeremy Ruckert's NFL draft stock. All right, so there you have it. Those are my winners here of the 2022 Senior Bowl. Definitely make sure, if you have not already, to head on over to patreon.com/theFFeducator and check out the Rookie Big Board. 85 finished evaluations here, adding more every day. And of course, you can see all of the rankings included, adjusted from the Senior Bowl. As always, I appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.